So just stepping into the survey for a second and to talk about the genesis of this. In January of 2013, Utopia Research was born, and it was really a calling or an idea, an original intent to create a research group that would take a very data-centric view around many hot topics and areas of interest in the data space. There are lots of other authorities out there on business intelligence, on applications, change management, business processes, and the list literally goes on and on. We really wanted a single focus on hot topics that our customers were bringing to us on a daily basis. Things like big data, things like Hadoop, what projects were getting funded in 2013, how to make a business case for a hot project, what technologies are being used to solve and enable data management issues, and what was driving this great data space all in all. What are the hot topics, and if I could create data as a differentiator in my business, what would I be doing? And so the idea came about in January, and we spent quite a bit of time formulating what we thought was a succinct questionnaire or survey, and lo and behold, spent a bit of time whittling down about 100 some odd questions down to 25 questions that would hopefully give us some insights and provide some future direction in this very specific data space. So, and by the way, it's not unlike when we we opened Utopia Labs in April 2012, just 1 year ago, and it's a fantastic state-of-the-art facility meant to learn, collaborate, and innovate on data solutions. But it was during that time we also found CIOs, SAP program managers, database architects, and folks in the data community struggling to get a handle on the right multi-generational roadmap for how to handle things like columnar databases, advanced BI, whether it be predictive or prescriptive or streaming, master data solutions. We've had a convergence and a divergence of technologies and capabilities, cloud-based applications. In the end, much of the concern and the stumbling blocks around all the things that we were talking about, both in the survey and things we were finding in Utopia Labs, the stumbling blocks were rooted in the lack of data management, strategy, and governance, and the overall plan for long-term sustainment of the right information at the right time anywhere, which is what the business has been asking IT for many years already. So that as a backdrop, as we go into the results of the survey, and I'll try to orient each of you to the questions and the answers, we created an infographic, which I'll be happy to share with each of you pending the results of this webinar. And what I've done is basically taken a number of the graphics from that infographic and created the slides to at least get through some of the meaningful content. As far as the number of survey respondents, we had 141 folks respond to the survey. Certainly, I remember in the early weeks or early days of February watching the daily count creep up, and finally by the end of February we were done surveying and we had shut the survey down. And I think when we got to the first 10, we were excited that we had people responding. By the time we got to 50, we started to realize we had some relevant trends. At 100, we knew that we had statistically modeled some responses and some capabilities to drive additional insights. And I think that's going to only increase as we go through and continue to harness the power of our customers, our community, our partners, and for that we thank each of you. When we look at the 141 respondents, you can see in the middle graphic that 29% of those respondents came from companies with greater than 15,000 employees. So certainly large businesses. And 71% came from companies with greater than 1,000 employees. So the demographics on the folks that responded, not unlike our customers, tend to be in the Fortune 5,000, Fortune 2,000, Fortune 500. And I think the one interesting point here was that 82% of the respondents were at a manager level up to the C-suite. So yes, we had a number of CIOs, we had a number of CFOs, we had a number of CTOs respond, and it's great to get the insights of some of the decision makers to see how they're viewing data in their business as to whether or not it's a differentiator in how they can drive additional projects. Diving now into the data specific, the questions that we asked around the data domains that interested people were meant to seek out where people were focusing. If you're going to have a data project, where was it going to be? What type of content was it going to be around your sales domain, purchasing, finance, customer, and then roughly how many projects did you have? So starting in the upper left quadrant with the orange graphic, 49% of the respondents included or stipulated they would have at least 7 IT projects in 2013. That really was the median of the results that we found. And the question provided the capability for people to say 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 10, and then greater than 10. And by and large, this was really where the mass of folks responded. Albeit many of the IT projects could be rooted in hardware, we found later on in another question that most of it really was around applications, business intelligence, so forth, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it was a great response just to understand the landscape of the number of projects and transformational initiatives that companies will have in 2013. Moving just to the right, in the blue, 50% of these IT projects that people indicated they would have in 2013, they also indicated would not have a data quality work stream where they were going to identify and put together a governance plan for those specific applications and projects to ensure quality. So certainly concerning, and one of the things that we'll track and trend in future surveys to see if there's an increase in the number of projects that have data quality built into the process. Continuing down now to the green graphic, 76% of customers considered customer data to have the most important aspects to have accurate to run their business. Now the question really was, the question assumed financial data to be the most important to have accurate, since CFOs and CEOs need to sign off on the fact that it's accurate. So after finance data, what is the number one domain of content, domain of data in your business that you expect to have or should have the most accurate? And 76% of the respondents indicated customer data. Right after that, a number of folks also interpolated the data to say that at least 44% of IT initiatives would focus on sales data and sales processes, while 37% of IT initiatives would focus on purchase data and processes. So still sales data, whether it be from CRM, it be around accounts payable, receivable, was important. And the purchase data, whether it be around supplier, vendor, for inventory management, strategic sourcing, were also important. And I think you've got the yin and the yang of corporate businesses. Are we driving revenues, or are we trying to drive expense reduction? And then I've got a quote here from William Foster, which I particularly like. Quality is never an accident. It's always a result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, and skillful execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. And I think as we work with all of our clients and work in the community in the data space, it's good to have a motto or mantra to work through and understand why the data stream is going to be instigated in any application, business process, or management transformation work stream. So looking at trending data topics, if any of you, like myself, belong to a number of Twitter groups and you follow TDWI or the Data Warehouse or Utopia Global, you'll see trending a number of topics like big data, like Hadoop, like data scientists. In fact, big data, as we started to carve out the questions to ask about big data, I know there's been a number of write-ups and articles and consternation as to whether or not it's just big hype. And so we wanted to dispel that, or at least understand what folks were doing and thinking about big data. Hadoop, similarly, a lot of large businesses have solved complex, large data volume business issues using Hadoop. But we wanted to realize and understand, after the massive data companies like Facebook, like Amazon, like Yahoo, like Wells Fargo or Bank of America were the next set of businesses with traditional accounts payable, vendor, customer, supplier type content, were they also exploring Hadoop to solve big data issues and to be able to look at trending of recent history and open transactions compared to, say, 20 years of transactions. Likewise, we also want to understand the view and role of data scientists in 2013. Oddly enough, I think it was last week or the week before, Information Week or Yahoo Finance, I forget which, had indicated that data scientists were the sexiest job of 2013, of the 21st century. I'm not sure if that meant people that were working in data were sexy or if it was just the role. You can draw your own conclusions, and certainly Google the article after the webinar, a fascinating read. So we wanted to spend some time just understanding what people were thinking about these topics. And you can see clearly that 17% of companies will have or plan to implement a big data initiative over the next 12 months. So I think we still are on the early cusp of organizations trying to use big data as a differentiator to understand how to get massive volumes of content from a variety of sources and in a much faster, more complex ways than ever before, and to use these aspects as differentiators. We'll call those the early adopters. But right behind those early adopters, you have another 41% of folks that are talking about big data. And while it's unplanned, they're starting to talk about it and investigate how to deal with collections of data sets that are very large and how to handle them from a technology and a process standpoint in their business initiatives. Likewise, Hadoop. I was actually surprised to see that over 19% of companies were either already using Hadoop or exploring uses of using Hadoop. Fantastic open source capability that allows the mix and blend of database, software, and hardware to answer very complex volume issues that many companies, specifically in the retail space, are struggling with. We found a number of quotes and responses back on never before they spent so much time with the technology and words like pig and R and the cute little elephant with Hadoop. Data scientists. 42% of companies indicated that they will be hiring or considering hiring additional data scientists in 2013. So much like the business analyst role getting very much increasing valuation during the 80s and 90s and even 2000s, we're starting to see a very specific role for organizations and for people to work in an organization. And the major goal of the data scientist really is to find data in a company and make it easier for people to understand. It is what drives the right analytics, the right decision making, the right business intelligence. It is what helps make the transactional applications operate better. And so the data scientist role, is not too surprising, has shown via the survey to have an increased level of interest and increased level of importance in organizations. I'll let this slide speak for itself. I think the interesting item on the left, when we looked at IT spending and the profile of IT spending for 2013, we had specific questions around application spend, hardware spend, and infrastructure spend. And all of them really roughly looked the same. And we saw a slight increase in spending, 30% increasing in spending versus 23% reducing in spending, and about 47% staying static. I think the interesting item is where people were looking to spend. And while it's the smallest bubble, the green bubble of cloud software has taken a foothold. Cloud software has become a very interesting, compelling, and quick ROI investment in a number of businesses. Utopia Global, as a 500-person company, has invested significantly in cloud software. So I was interested just to see that we're not unlike others. We have an ERP based in cloud. We have a BI tool based in cloud, market research tools based in cloud, and even an HR application based in cloud. But I think certainly the analytics and reporting answers that we got back were also illuminating. And 59% of the folks said they'd be spending money and time investing in how to find more information about what's running in their cloud software, what's running in their ERP applications, what's running in legacy applications, and included finding the solution to big data, finding the analytics and reporting of not just their content and the information that's going on in their applications, but also in what's going on in third-party applications, their vendors, their suppliers, their customers. At Utopia Global, we're a lot of our customers run SAP, so a bit of a self-serving question, but we also thought it would just be interesting to dive into the spend of SAP customers. And I've got it rank ordered on the left in bullet form, but you can see the percentages of folks that responded, stating they would either be spending on business intelligence, HANA, MDM, MDG, EIM, lots of great acronyms. But I think if I really start to look at groupings here, if you look at the 23% in BWBI and 17% in HANA, that 40% really was to try to find analytics engines that were more meaningful and to spend more time in that space to either get faster, better quality of reporting and business intelligence. I think that shifting of HANA into 2013, 2014 will obviously take a bigger role in the ERP spend as companies use HANA as a great column in their database to load their suite on HANA. But for right now, in the early part of this year, I think it'd be fair to say that that 17 and 23% really was BI spend. Likewise, the two bottom circles, MDG and MDM, Master Data Governance and Master Data Management, represented 37% of where companies said they'd be spending their dollars on IT spend and IT projects. And I think it only goes to show that the growing trend of companies finally taking static, mature applications and building the right processes for creating data standards, data rules, data roles, data responsibilities in organizations, and then developing that around and enabling technology has also taken a strong foothold. And then in EIM, Enterprise Information Management, 17%, we had really cordoned off a number of technologies like data services. And what were companies going to use and spend on? Were they going to use it for profiling and analytics like Information Steward, data services where they were going to provide some fantastic ETL transform capabilities with high-value data quality roles, text analysis, and so forth. So as we're getting near the end, this is an interesting set of questions that got answered, and it really did revolve around strategy, reports, accurate information, and governance. And I think if I look at the very first graphic on the left in the orange, I think this was one of the most surprising answers that I got back. And as I had looked at and did the analysis and the results, only 38% of the companies reported that they have a data governance strategy in place. And listening and looking at that and reading that, you'll understand why the rest of the numbers to the right are what they are. In fact, with only 38% of the companies having a data governance strategy in place, it was not surprising that only 21% of the companies reported they trusted all of the data in the reports. Now, trusting all the data in your reports, I guess, would be a large leap of faith. But in fact, we had 53% of the companies claim that more than 6% of the data they used in business decisions was inaccurate. So imagine selling that to the CEO, CFO, CIO, or any other line of business manager, letting them know that you please expect at least half the time that at least 6% of the data you're using in your decisions to be inaccurate. It only points out to the fact that many companies are still evolving from a data maturity model and understand they need to have a very specific governance and strategy in place, not just for new applications that will get built and up and running, and not just new data sources that will have transactional inputs, but even for the legacy applications. How do we go back and make sure that the feeds of content, the feed of data that runs our transactional applications, our business intelligence tools and dashboards is accurate enough so that when we give the right expectation, we give the right dashboard and analytic and predictive content to our business line of business owners that make decisions, that they can believe in the content. In fact, as you see in the red circle, only 26% of respondents indicated they obtain information and knowledge needed from their data to run the business better. And I think this is a key aspect where any of us, whether we're a data steward, a CIO, or in the data community helping organizations, we can really start to use this as a focal point, as a differentiator for our customers and for our businesses. The ability to drive and get additional insights and knowledge from the data that you're using to run your business is essential in creating differentiators for your market space. It's essential for understanding what products you need to get fastest to market. It's essential for understanding where you can cut costs soonest and without as much impact to the business. Without getting those types of insights and information, companies struggle. And then the final graphic here, 35% of companies responded they still have neither a master data governance or a data governance initiative in place. So not only not a data governance strategy, but not even a data governance initiative in place, and didn't have master data management holding together the understanding and the definitions of what their data is. I think the surprising part for me there is the fact that if we look at most of our customers, even something as simple as customer data, not to have a master data management strategy will create a lot of inaccuracies and lack of norms. I think if you look at most companies with 20, 30 applications, customer data will be in nearly all of those in some form or another. So without a master data management strategy, an enterprise data quality strategy, and a data governance process in place, it's difficult to know that you've got one Doug Jones versus Douglas S. Jones, or one Utopia versus Utopia Global, or Utopia ANZ, and to understand and get the right details into your reports and analytics, and to drive your transactional process decision making. So one final slide. Who is the data boss? We want to understand who really is sponsoring data initiatives. And in fact, 52% of data initiatives were still responded as CIO. Even though there was an opportunity to put line of business owner, people still indicated that the data sponsor is the CIO 52% of the time. Also not surprising, the CFO, who drives a lot of initiatives and a lot of programs in the IT function of business, CFO is responding 20% of the time, and CEO 16%. So I think it still stands to reason that building the right initiative and the right business case around making sure data is a sponsored part of the program, sponsored part of the work stream, has data governance to any new applications, any new initiatives, is still key to link in not just the line of business owners, but also make sure that the C-suite has the right level of involvement and the right level of data and expertise to help make these decisions and push these initiatives forward. So with that, I'll thank you for attending. On the left, you can see a copy of the infographic that will be coming out to each of you after this webinar. And by all means, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to take offline, my cell number and email address are both provided on the right card. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Terry.
Sure. Thanks, Doug. The floor is now open for questions. You can enter the questions either via Twitter using the hashtag UtopiaWeb, or you may enter your questions in the GoToWebinar tool pane. And Doug, we did have a couple come in during the presentation, so we'll start with those while people enter any additional questions. While you were talking about big data, someone asked, how are people tackling big data at this point? Have they indicated where they're starting?
Great question. In fact, a very typical question is I sit in on forums with a number of CIOs and spend time with a lot of leaders trying to tackle big data as an overarching issue. Big data for me, as I've heard a number of people really respond to it, is about dealing with the small data issue. Big data, if you think about the pilot's dashboard, is really about having more instruments and flying faster. So if in good pilot school you can learn to fly the Piper Cub and you can get the foundational fundamentals right of how to take off, how to land, how to read the various instrumentation, then you've at least got the framework for taking on more and more complex scenarios, more and more complex dashboards, if you will, in this analogy, much like a fighter jet. So I think the key is to, again, get back to the fundamentals and the foundational items of which content is most important to be used in the organization, and taking a look and assessing that. What content is going to be used for decision making? What is what are the basic components or varieties of content that we'll bring in that are most essential? And then what are the data quality rules and processes and that I can put in place so that as I'm ingesting these things in small volumes, I can withstand the bigger volumes later on. And so I think really it does begin with taking a level assessment across the organization of the key content, the key legacy applications, the key third-party applications, the basic understanding of your own data quality strategy and business rules and governance process. That sounds like a lot, but I think if you start and break it down to the fundamental pieces, it becomes achievable.
Okay, another question for you, Doug. Is there a link that Utopia has seen between success in a data project and who the executive sponsor of the project is?
Well, another great question. Is there a link between the project success and who the data sponsor is? So I won't point and say, yeah, it's generally more successful if the CEO is involved as the CIO. I think the key is in the level of involvement of the data sponsor. So if you've got somebody charging out a new implementation of an ERP or a new data warehouse or a new big data initiative, I think the key is to hold the data stream front and center and make sure that it's integrated completely, not just at the base level of the project, with Johnny in the corner working on an Excel spreadsheet and trying to do rudimentary consolidation or parsing or standardization, but really make it a forethought in how the project gets driven. And so when we find customers that have executive sponsorship and that make sure the data is the first, second, and last thing done, we find that they become more successful and the project becomes successful because they truly do integrate it and make sure that the content is ready. Make sure that the interviews and the analysis and the rule building is not just done for a single project, but overall as a corporate strategy for all future projects.
Doug, this relates to the 35% of customers that do not have an MDM or MDG initiative in place. We have someone who's wondering if that number, if those answers came predominantly from smaller companies, those with 1,000 employees or less, rather than the larger companies.
Well, you caught me flat-footed. I will need to go back and look at the analysis. I know that had it been a meaningful, significant difference, it likely would have also called to my attention. But if you could let me know who asked, or if you can send me an email, I'll be happy to go back and look at the research data and get you the very specific answer. I do have the answer. I just don't have it in front of me.
One additional question. Someone is trying to present a global master data strategy to their executives, and they're wondering who would a global master data manager typically report to in an organization?
Well, master data management, a global master data manager at some point ends up reporting to the CIO, almost directly, if not directly, primarily because the role requires every new application, every new initiative to go through the same process. And it also becomes one of the biggest differentiators of all the IT products going forward. So in many companies, and I remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, in this space, MDM was a four-letter word. People thought that was the thing that was going to slow things down. And I think in the last 5, 10 years, we've seen a large change in that role, as well as in the attitudes towards it. And people are starting to realize that if I don't have a master data strategy and a master data management in place to ensure the content's right, I'm not going to be able to enable all these other things. So they really do become the right-hand person to the Chief Information Officer. And I know even here at Utopia Global, while we don't have a role called MDM, a global MDM person, we do in effect have that role. We just don't call it that role. And that person does work primarily with our Chief Information Officer and works for our Chief Information Officer. So I would assume that you'd see the same thing, and I know I have seen much of the same thing in corporate enterprise.
Doug, we've gotten several questions in asking about future Utopia Research surveys, about when another survey may come out, and if we know what topic it will be on, and if not, are we willing to take suggestions on interesting topics?
I love it. We got more passionate data people like myself, not just data people, but analytical folks that want to know more. So yes, absolutely. The plan and goal is to have at least 3, if not 4, surveys annually. We'll change up the topics. We get very specific. We'll also get very segmented in the roles and types of people that we question in future releases. But I'll turn that back to you, the audience. I'd love to hear and see what what you would like to know more about. With our Utopia newsletter, it comes out each month. We get a lot of requests back on things to look at, and that's the same thing here. We really want to make this a place to serve the data community, and while I know we'll spend more time talking about very specific targets around big data and MDG and data migration and how to drive more data to insights, how to get more predictive out of your business. There are a lot of very foundational, very fundamental things that people still want to dive into. So if you have any great questions or suggestions, by all means, we'd love to get your feedback and incorporate that into our next major survey, which, by the way, I think will probably take place in the mid to end of June timeframe, and then we'll have another one in the fall and early winter.
With that, Doug, I'd like to thank you for leading us in today's session to go over the results of Utopia Research's inaugural survey. And thank you to all of you who were able to join us. There is a survey following the webinar, and there are spots that you can fill in the type of information that Doug just mentioned. So feel free to give us feedback on what you'd like to see from Utopia Research in the future, as well as from Utopia Global, and we'll take all of those suggestions under our hat as we build out the upcoming surveys. If you'd like to learn more about Utopia itself, you can visit our website at www.utopiainc.com. Doug's contact information is up on the screen, so you can reach him directly via those avenues. This webinar was recorded, will be available to you shortly, and we'll be providing the infographic, as Doug mentioned as well. And we look forward to you guys joining us on our next webinar. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.